I'm good. How are you, brother? Yeah, I decided to grow my beard out this morning for everybody. Go a little mountain man. Yeah, this is my afternoon shadow. 5 o'clock shadow. Sure, sure. Well, thank you. It's great to be on, and some of the names that you fired off give a real a warm welcome to some of the folks that get to hear my voice and have heard my voice quite a bit. Some of the mentoring students that I've personally been working with. And so it's a real honor to be on. I love Purpose Friday. I love the flow and the freeness and the learning that happens in a group setting. And so it's always fun for me to jump on here on Fridays. For those of you who haven't who don't know me, my background is in really the nonprofit world, and I would say just the helping people world. And my particular the organization that I started about a dozen years ago is a housing company that we focused on. I called it Habitat for Humanity on steroids. We had a real big need in our area for affordable housing, and I'd kind of always known my whole life that at some point people come to the crossroads of knowing that there's more to life than just going to school, going to college, getting married, getting a car, getting a mortgage, getting a divorce, and then you die. Right? There's more to life than that, and there's an actual purpose. There's some reason why we're here, and I came to that crossroads real early on in life, and so that's what really led me to launch the nonprofit. I was newly married at the time. I just graduated college, and I promised my wife that I would have it up and running in 6 months, and that if I didn't, that I would find another job. I would go deliver pizzas or something, and nothing against pizza delivery folks, because that's a very I love. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. The old Lobos lineman kept them in business over in Albuquerque a few years back. so 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 the reason that that's important, the reason that I bring that up is because I would say a majority of the people that I work with and the majority of you that are on the call today are in that window. They're in a window of 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 launching. They have an idea. You have a passion. You have this purpose. You've come to that crossroads in your life where you realize that there's more to it than just waking up and going to work and coming home and watching a football game and then going to bed and doing it all over again tomorrow. There's more to it than that, and it's how can we make this world a better place than it was when we got here, and 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 so and why I say I had 6 months to start was why that's important is because that's really why I'm sitting here today. Is I really just share with people the process and the mentality that I had as I launched that nonprofit. And to be honest, it was a pretty hefty goal. I was pretty young and naive. Didn't have a lot of experience. Didn't have any experience, to be honest, other than just pure grit and determination, passion and fearlessness. The Lord really equipped me with some gifts and talents I didn't even know I had at the time. But really, it's what motivated me. It's what drove me to keep my eye on the prize, so to speak, and not get distracted with the different obstacles that come along the way. And I want to talk a little bit about that later. It's really been something that I've been working with the mentoring students a lot on over the last few months, is really just correct thinking and really to have a successful mindset, because there's a lot of people that are passionate. Okay, there's a lot of people that have that want to go out and do something good, but when it comes to taking that idea and making it a reality, right? That's a very difficult thing, right? To be a success, to have successful outcome. And so what I've been really talking to our mentoring students a lot about lately is how to get their mind correct, get a right thinking to succeed, and how a successful mind works. And so I'm kind of spinning off here. I had 6 months to raise $2.5 million, and I'd never built a house before in my life. Again, I was 22 years old, and so, but man, I had visualized it in my head so many times what it looked like just to have this organization, what it looked like to help these families get a home, that it didn't really matter what people said. We were going to succeed. I'm a very, as my brother Derek knows, I'm a very ADD minded person, and so to try to stay focused for me for 6 months on one thing and get down into the nitty-gritty details, it was a real challenge for me just to get through a day. Focused on something was pretty tough. College was a real chore for me. But I cowboyed up and I bared down and did it. But I had to create tools. I had to create specific tools that kept me thinking intentionally. It kept my time intentional. I didn't have time to be afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody. I didn't have time to be afraid to go to a meeting that I really, was a little bit nervous about. What if they ask me a question I don't know the answer to? I didn't have time for any of that, because the longer it took me to get this done, the longer it was that the people were without the houses that we were going to build for them. And so it really drove me, it really motivated me to get this thing off the ground. And I didn't want to go, 5 months and 29 days and not have this accomplished and just waste the last 6 months and really embarrass myself and all the people that I went out and told I was going to do something and not get it done. So that's really it's really why we're here today, is and why those are the things that I go through with our mentoring students one-on-one. Is just the what it took, and the mentality, and the how to set up proper business models, and the most important thing is this, that you focus on the intended outcome, not the activity. So the activity is a byproduct of what the intended outcome is. A lot of people will focus, and they're content with the activity. They're content mentoring 20 youth a week. They're content, providing counseling to people coming out of jail, 20 a week. They're content with the activity, and they lose sight of the intended outcome. And so that's something that's really important that we focus on. The other thing that's important is none of this happens if we don't create a fundable, sustainable business model. And so we take a lot of time. I take a lot of time in not going out there and fishing, and bringing a bunch of fish to people. I teach them how to fish. And we look at a lot of other successful models, and we ask ourselves early on the hard questions. How, if you build this, if Miss Abbott, okay, when you have this building donated, okay, how are people going to find out about you? How do you market to people? Do you have a waiting list? Do you already have people that are going to, do you have people that are going to donate furniture to you? Do you have, so you ask yourself those hard questions, and then you go out and you find the answers. And that's your very intentional action plan, action strategy. And then what happens is, over time, you build a rock solid, sustainable business model that is fundable, and you also create your future, 3 to 5 year vision as well. So, so there you go. There's my background, brother. Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, you bet. You bet. Well, there's a few. Say that. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit. One thing that I would suggest even now is, as you're listening in, maybe fire off a few hot topics that you are really curious about right now. Fire those questions or topics off to Derek. Things that you're really interested and eager in, as far as a priority. And that's what I love about Purpose Friday is it's a little loose, and we can really get into the things that you really want to know about. And so anything that you kind of want to dive into a little bit deeper, fire those off to Derek, and then we'll pick a couple of them to hone in on in a little bit. So I just want those to be coming in and be thinking about those, and then towards the end we'll dive in deeper to those. So Derek, say again what you want me to talk about. Yeah, you bet. You bet. Well, do you have the ability to share my screen? Okay. You can just pull my screen up for a second. We can talk through these things. Let me know when you got it. All right. You good? Okay. So this is really the foundation of your business model. I spend a majority of my time when I work with folks, and to be honest, this is a model that works with for-profits and nonprofits, and the essence of it, and those that work with myself on a one-on-one basis, yes, they know this, they've seen this over and over, but the beauty of it is that it really helps you as the leader, as the founder, as the visionary of this organization that you're creating. Um, you're the one that has to know the vision of where you're going better than anybody. Okay, and part of what helped me, really buckle down and raise $2.5 million in the first 6 months was because I looked myself in the mirror and I asked myself the hard questions early on, and then and it forced me to be intentional about how I spent my time. And I like to think of our brains as a desktop. Okay, you think of a desktop and there's these papers and files all over it, right? That's typically how my brain works. Information just kind of comes in and it goes wherever it wants to go, and then it's tough to figure out where it went when I need it. And so knowing those things about yourself, knowing that about myself, that's why I created this business model. This is the actual business model that I set up and used whenever I launched. And the thing about it is I always teach to keep things really simple. Break things down into a very elementary level to where it makes it not overwhelming. A lot of people get overwhelmed in this process. And to me, there's just 4 areas that you really need to focus on when you're launching and developing this business. Okay, the first thing is you got to know who you're serving, and it's you need to think about this, in terms of what's your market. Okay, what is your specific market? Is it worldwide? Is it think of your market as Google Maps. Okay, so you start up here and you can see the whole world, and then you can see the country, and then you can see your state, then you can see your county, and all the way down to where you're in your own backyard. Okay, and so when you think about your market, understand what that market is, understand what the need is. Okay, and so we spend time going out and figuring out what the need is. Sometimes the best way to know what's not happening in a specific area is by finding out what is happening. And so you go out and you just get that, you begin to get that that experience and talk to people, finding out what the need is. So we spend a tremendous amount of time asking ourselves questions about who we serve. Okay, if you're a funder, the other thing that I challenge people with, and I challenge myself with in this process, is if I had $1 million and I was going to give myself $1 million of my own hard-earned money, what questions would I have? Okay, when it comes to who you're serving, right? You got this great building donated. Okay, how many people are you going to serve? Okay, how are those people going to come find you? Asking yourself the hard questions and then going out and delivering on those things before those questions are ever asked. I had a waiting list. I had a waiting list of 20 people that were pre-qualified. I had 400 meetings. I had 400 meetings with families to get 20 pre-qualified for our program. And that was before we raised a dime. Okay, and so that's why we were able to be funded, was because I did the hard work before. I did the stuff I knew that needed to be done before anyone asked me to in the process. When it comes to your programs, right, this is the activity. This when you're thinking about who you're serving, right, you're focusing on, okay, what is the intended outcome, right? What is it that we want to achieve here? Okay, And then your programs, that's the activity that your organization is going to engage in to achieve those ultimate outcomes, okay? So the reality of it is when you're thinking about your programs, people will come in and they'll have these really amazing ideas, and they'll have these sometimes really off-the-wall ideas, and it's great. I love it. I love outside-the-box thinking. But what we have to come back to is we have to remember that we need to understand how the money flows in and how the money goes out of every program as it relates to your organization. And the first thing I think about when I'm presented with a program is, okay, how does the money flow through it? Okay, I think a lot of times people, when it comes to a nonprofit, is they think donations, grants, and the reality of it is, and I don't have time to go really deep into this, but the reality of it is, these are corporations, okay, and it's very important that we set up this business model to be sustainable. And what that means is you're not dependent upon grants and donations to survive. And so we're constantly thinking about revenue streams that can be generated through your organization, because we have these amazing ideas. We have these incredible missions. And think about grants and donation as the icing, okay, and your business is the cake. Okay, who doesn't love to just sit down every once in a while and get some icing? I mean, icing is great, okay? But I'm going to tell you that after a while, you get sick of icing, right? You get sick of eating just icing. And before you know it, you get sick just thinking about the icing, okay? And that's what happens when organizations go out and they launch and they just rely on donations. They just doing these fundraisers year after year after year, and they go after a grant, and then one year they find out that, oh no, HUD just cut their funding in half for my program. Okay, and the point is, you need to have that sustainable business model so that not only so basically that you can continue to provide the needed service that you set out to do. I'll tell you, a majority of these startup nonprofits, they end up walking away really fed up and sad because they spent all their effort and energy in fundraising, and they never really got to do an effective job of the service that they want to do, and then they just get burnt out. Okay, and so that's really why we spend a lot of time building a sustainable business model, and really, as Derek alluded to earlier, to really think about innovative, outside of the box strategic funding strategies that will lead to more sustainability inside your organization, and such as the charitable giving of real estate. There's some other fun things that we teach as well when it comes to outside the box thinking. The third pillar is your resources. Okay, to have a very specific, when you have very specific programs, you know specifically the amount of money that you're going to need. You have a budget. You have, you already know the types of funding you need. You've got proven models that you're looking at and that you're comparing to, so that you can go to your funders and say, look, based upon what we've seen from these other proven models, we know we're going to need this amount of funding, and it's going to come from somebody like you. It leads to more confidence. So, and the most important part about this third pillar is when you're building this business model, you're going to be going out and generating meetings, and you're going to be building relationships, and you're going to be connecting. And as you talk to people, you've got to qualify them. Okay, is this a potential partner? Is this a potential champion for our cause? Or is this somebody that has funding? A lot of times people will go into meetings and they won't qualify who they're talking to, and they may be talking to the mayor, asking the mayor, if he can write them a check, and the mayor's going, wait, time out. That's not what we do. Okay, and so a lot of a lot of this, we teach a lot of interpersonal. Sherry and myself, everyone on our team, it's really the heart and soul of what this is all about, and it's about building relationships and connecting with people, not sitting behind a computer screen trying to build this thing without ever reaching out to anybody, and without ever meeting with anybody. It's just not going to happen. And so that's where having this third pillar and understanding and building your relationships on a quality level in a very intentional way. And then the last thing that really, this is the fourth pillar, and it's really important because I see this as one of the big roadblocks to, it's a stumbling block for people. Number one, because most people aren't savvy in real estate, and so it's kind of a scary animal when you think about, when you really think through a real estate deal from start to finish. People are scared. There's a lot of contracts. There's a lot of language and things, legalese that may or may not make sense. And the reality is that when you start a nonprofit, 9 times out of 10, there's some level of real estate that you have to engage in, whether it's an office, whether you just need a place to rent a space, whether you need classroom space, whether you need a building for housing, transitional housing, whether you need a rehab center, whether you need an entire campus for your organization. You could be rescuing horses, and so you need some land. The reality is that it's hard to know what resources you need without a real estate plan. And so we've worked with people for months and months and months, and couldn't get past this stage here. We couldn't even know what to ask for until we were able to understand what their short-term real estate plan was. What's their long-term real estate plan? Are they going to incorporate charitable giving of real estate inside of their business model here? So that's in a nutshell your business model. This becomes your living, breathing vision for your company. It's also the document that you use when you apply for funding. It's all right here. Every piece of information you need is all right here. Okay. And so this is really the pulse of your business, so to speak. Is your business model. So one other thing, real quick, Derek, and then I'll turn it back to you for a minute. One thing that's really important, and that I really, if you've heard me say it, the handful of my mentoring students that are on this call today, it's always worth hearing again. And that is, I really want to get you guys thinking like successful people. And there's a few things that I teach that are relevant to what we're talking about today. And that is to get your mind to think, to get beyond the roadblocks, right, that cause people to quit, to fail, to give up. Okay, and I'm not saying any one of you are quitters. I'm saying it's very easy. It's very easy to get frustrated. It's very easy when we step up to do what's right, when we step up to do good, right? There's going to be obstacles, and it's not going to be easy. And so it's important that we have the right mindset. The first thing that successful people do is they get relevant experience, okay? And you get relevant experience in a number of ways. When it comes to, and let me back up a second. I don't measure success by money, okay? Money is not the measure of success. Money is a result of it, right? Money is a byproduct of success, okay? However, it's not the cause of it. Okay, and so when we think about success, we think about it in terms of a boxer, right, that goes out and gets a world championship, an Olympian that gets a gold medal. Okay, somebody that you set out to do something and you go out and you achieve it. Okay, that's how we're measuring success, just setting a goal and going after it and doing it. Um, the first thing is they go out and they get relevant experience. Okay, and so for people, for you guys launching an organization, if you've already launched an organization, you're going out to get relevant experience. And one of the ways that I got relevant experience right away was I went out and found 3 organizations that were already successfully doing what I wanted to do. Okay, and I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I didn't have time to reinvent the wheel. So I went out there and visited their sites. I became friends with them. They became really advisors to me, and that really it gave me a level of confidence to overcome obstacles on a local level, because mentally I already knew it could be done. Okay, mentally I already knew that it could be done. Hey Derek, are you still there? Okay, good. Okay, great. Yeah, my internet I just lost my internet, so I want to make sure you can still hear me. So the the reality is that I gained a level of confidence because I saw it was already done and I was getting relevant experience. I saw it happen. The other benefit of that is you know what to ask for. These other organizations that were already proven models, they gave me budgets. They gave me a list of the funding sources that they went out and they got. They gave me a list of their staffing plans and those types of things. And so it's valuable, priceless information that they gave me. And so that was really beneficial. The second thing that successful people do, the people that have a successful mindset that they do, is and this is important, guys, this is something I see over and over and over, and people come to me, the people that come to me with concerns, this is typically not being done, okay? And that is simply this: focus on what you can control. Okay, people that are successful, they draw on what they can control. Okay, they don't focus on the things that they can't control. And one of the biggest things that you cannot control is you cannot control what other people think about you and what other people what other people's opinions of what you're doing are. Okay, so a lot of times in this process, the people that are really going to be working against you the most are your friends and family. They're going to tell you this is a dumb idea. They're going to tell you you're never going to succeed. If I had a nickel for every person that told me that this wasn't going to work when I launched our organization, I mean, I would be rich. I had contractors tell me it couldn't be done. The chief building inspector, okay, he said, I'm not going to issue you permits. Okay, and it was so crazy because I had already gone out and got relevant experience, because I only focused on what I can control. Most people, if when they get those type of things, those type of things come their way, they say, oh man, we're sunk. We're not going to get permits. Oh, woe is me. Okay, and I went out, and my first thought when he said that was, oh yes, he is. He just doesn't know it yet. Okay, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's already being done. Okay, and so I focused. My focus was so much on only what I can control, and I had seen what I wanted, what we were going to accomplish, and so that was where I kept my focus on what I can control. I can control my attitude. I can control my actions. Right? I can control those things, and so that's what I did. The last thing that people with a successful mindset have is they have vivid visualization of winning. Okay, it's such vivid visualization of winning over and over and over and overcoming the obstacles. The obstacles become obsolete when you've already seen yourself winning over and over and over. So a boxer, right? A boxer, a world champion boxer has seen himself raise his arm so many times that it becomes second nature. It's already happened in his mind. Okay, and he, he's closed his eyes and he can envision wrapping his arms around his wife and just it's there. Okay, and that's the same that's the same, with when I started our organization. I literally, before we broke ground on our first house, when I closed my eyes, I could see the tears rolling down the faces of the families that were getting new homes. I could see the joy in the kids' face, and that drove me to press in when obstacles came, right? And everyone on this call knows what those obstacles are: family issues, financial issues, people distracting you. All of those things happen. All those things come up during this process. And so what I would encourage you is to think successfully. You've got to vividly visualize the outcome, vividly visualize winning, and those are three really critical things that a mindset that successful people have. And so I want to share that because it's relevant in this stage of development that everyone on this call is in, to make sure and keep that frame of mind, and to keep focusing on the things that you can control, because I'll tell you, most of the reason why people succeed in going out and launching a successful nonprofit, and the biggest reason why people fail, it's all up here. It's all mental. It's overcoming. And it sounds cliche, and I run the risk of sounding like a professional, self-help guru, and that everyone that knows me knows that that's not who I am. But I'm telling you that up here, that's what controls, and that's what will make this successful. We could talk about funding. Okay, we could talk about 99 strategies to raise capital for your nonprofit. Okay, but if you're scared, okay, if you don't have confidence, if you don't have a good business model, right, then all of that's irrelevant. And so our goal is not just to launch 10,000 nonprofits. Okay, our goal is to launch sustainable, fundable, productive nonprofits. So, all right, Derek, I'll pass it back to you, brother. That's right. That's right. I've got a lot of wood. I've got a lot of wood to cut tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. That's right. Mm. Sure. There's a number of different thoughts and strategies and things that things that I've seen happen. You know, there's some instances where you can get in kind donations. Another is just to ask. I've seen people put ads on Craigslist, you know, for donations of materials, small money amount donations. You know, there's the cool thing is when you start working this business model out, when you start looking through and thinking about your programs, what happens is you naturally uncover resources. You look at some of these other programs and you start researching what's happening out there. You start talking to people. You start talking to other successful organizations across the country, and I usually start with organizations that aren't in your same state, but they're doing what you want to do successfully. They have a model. I pick up the phone and I call them, and what happens is they're going to show you stuff. They're going to tell you stuff that you don't think about. Another interesting one that Derek and I have actually found to be a really kind of a sexy way to get some real quick short turnaround type of funding is through donor advised funds. It's one that most people don't think about, but if you know people that have when you think about people that are thinking in terms of estate planning, people that may have large companies, people that may have inherited some wealth, people that are looking to do, people that need they need the donation, right? They need the tax deduction. Donor advised funds are really fun. You know, Derek and I saw a $50,000 deposit happen, you know, really literally overnight. You know, a guy made a decision and he pulled the trigger, and the money, you know, he basically just asked for bank account information. And so that's one that a lot of people don't think about. And so I would write that down. I would research it. They're typically housed at larger financial institutions, but a lot of times community foundations will have donor advised funds, and they're really geared specifically towards, you know, different things in your organization. For those that are for those of you that aren't tax exempt yet, you can think about doing things like, you know, we teach charitable gifting of real estate, and so you start looking at real estate a little bit different. We will actually facilitate those deals for folks if it's not something that's in their wheelhouse. Those are fun ways to get some short-term money to operate out of. And the nice thing, here's the thing: if you have the basic footprint of your business model, right? If you just sit down and you draw this thing up and make it into a 10-page document that talks about who we serve, what our programs are, what are resources that we need, plus the resources that we've already got committed, and what our real estate plan is. If you sit down and spend a week building this, okay, I've seen people, okay, and in our mentoring program that took this document with them to a meeting, okay, and they got a $10,000 funding commitment just by talking to people about what they want to do. And so my point is, it's not so much that you go out and you ask for you know, seed capital, because there are seed capital providers all over, foundations, local groups, you know, those types of things. But by and large, my point in all this rambling is that when you start turning over stones and you start really getting your hands dirty in this process, that's when those types of funding are going to reveal themselves to you. And to be quite frank, what we teach people when it comes to filing for your tax exempt status, you know, we've helped a dozen people expedite expedite that process. And the reason they expedited it was because they had a good business model, and somebody agreed to give them $10,000 or $20,000 if they were tax exempt. And we used that $10,000 or $20,000 commitment to get their tax exempt status expedited. Hope that helps. Yep. Yep. And really, if we would have had our bank account set up with them, they literally the donor and those don't see the way real quick the way that those donor advised funds work is it's actually a vehicle that's been set up for a long time. I don't know how much it's been used in the past, but right now the way that those donor advised funds work is a lot of the bigger corporations, instead of setting up foundations, what they do is they dump this money into this donor advised fund. And they do that because they may not have a charity that they've already picked, or they may not have time to kind of go through the motions of it. And so what they do is they dump this money into this donor advised fund. Let's say they dump $1 million into the donor advised fund. Well, they get to take the charitable deduction that year. So they literally get to take the, if they donated it last year, they get in 2015, they get $1 million charitable deduction. And what happens is then there's no time limit on when they have to pick the charity that money goes to. So they could literally, send out $5,000 increments to different charities all over the country. And most charities, a lot of charities don't even know that those exist. And so, really presenting yourself to some of these people, building relationships with some of them, that's exactly what these guys did out in Colorado. That Derek and I are talking about. They literally they met somebody that and they started talking about it. He goes, oh hey, I got this donor advised fund, I'll just shoot you guys 50 grand. And the thing about it is, in their mind, that money's already spent. So it's not even a question. It's like, oh man, I just didn't know what charity to give it to. So I think you'd be wise, whoever asked that question, as you said, JP, Derek. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We had one of our mentoring students, they did a $60,000 crowd fund. It was about a 2 or 3 week, maybe like a 3 week process, and it was pretty elaborate what they did, but they raised about $60,000 in a crowd fund. So um, they did it really well. Yep, yep, yep. Linda Mack. Okay. So what do we? So give me the setup. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure, sure. I would some so the first example that would come to my mind would be an example of somebody. Let's say that they were listing. It's an expired listing, right? So it's a property has been in and off the market, but it hasn't sold. I would go to that person and or let's just say you drove past a particular property over and over and over and over. A little bit about it, but you don't know much. It's a vacant property, and so I would just do a little bit of research on the property before I talk to the person, and I would call them up and say, hey, um, I noticed this property that you have here. Would you be interested in learning, how you can, actually donate this property to our organization? There is some things about real estate donation you may not know, and it can be of value to both of us. And does that sound like something that may be interesting to you? And typically I'm listening at that point in time. I'm listening for their motivation level. At that point in time, what motivates them? I'm always listening in conversation for what motivates this person, and then I gear my communication to them based upon what motivates them. And so if they come back and they're real energetic and excited and real intrigued by what our organization does, well then I'm going to approach them from the standpoint of the fact that they're helping out our organization by doing this, and how many lives they can enhance. We have a group that builds houses for $800 over in Africa. Okay, and so a $20,000 donation, you could do the math on how many houses they could actually help build by donating this property to us. So if I hear in their voice that the actual charity motivates them, then I'm going to approach it that way. If I hear in their voice that they just need to dump the property and they need as much cash as possible, I'm going to approach it that way. And if I hear in their voice that they may actually benefit from a tax deduction, well then I'm going to approach the conversation that way. So a lot of charitable giving and real estate conversation, it's not about going in with one flat script. It's about listening to what motivates this person and really creating a solution for them, and not approaching it on what you get ever. Approach it from what they get. Approach it from how it will benefit them. and so from that point forward, I would move down, really that fork in the road, right? So I'd go down one of those paths, and I would lead into saying something like, we can actually, let's say it's 100,000. In your mind that it's because the research you've already done, that the property's worth about 100,000. That you could sell it all day long for, let's say, like a fire sale for 70,000 or 65,000. And so you go to that person, you say, look, there's a scenario, a real good scenario here, where we can offer you, say $50,000 for this property, and not only would you get 50,000 cash, but you would also get a 50,000 or thereabouts charitable gift. And does that sound interesting to you? And at that point in time, you're just listening again to see if that interests them. And then at that point in time, you either make a deal or you don't, or you go back and you negotiate and go on from there. And then ultimately you would get it under contract for 50,000. and then you'd go find a buyer for 65 or 70,000, and you walk away with a $20,000 donation. What's the question? Yeah. 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 Fiverr.com. FIV. Yeah. 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 Fiverr. I send. Go ahead. I send all of our mentoring students to Fiverr.com, and for $100 and less, they're getting logo, letterhead, a flyer, and a website. At least a basic website for typically less than $100. So you cannot beat graphic design work for less than $100, and you become real, inside the first month. Nice. That's how. That's how. Hey, that's how. That's exactly how me and Derek used to dance at our eighth grade dances when we were back in junior high, man. There were also no girls around. We were scared of girls too. That's fact. Mm. Mm. Amen. You bet. You bet. I enjoy it. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. We'll be talking to some of you very soon.